Hey everyone, we are back with Module 3 and we will be going over different behavior change theories and models today, which is in Chapter 7 of your textbook. So please be sure to read the text that covers this content as well. Alright, so let's first look at this image. We've seen this before in our previous lectures, but know that we are working our way down through the rationale process. And as we continue on today, we're going to be moving into looking at those theories and those constructs here in this section. All right, so let's look at factors influencing smoking behavior. So let's think about smoking. What factors influence whether you smoke or you don't smoke? What about if you're actually addicted to nicotine? What about the image, the self-image of yourself? Stress. Many individuals smoke because they're stressed. Peer groups. The taxes on tobacco. Your culture, society, ethnic group. Perhaps your family. Your families are a family of smokers. It's a leisurely activity. Religion. Education, your environment, how old you are, your gender, where you live, all of these things influence smoking behavior. So let's kind of keep that in mind as we continue walking through these factors that change or influence our behaviors. So factors that influence behavior change decisions include predisposing risk factors, reinforcing risk factors, and enabling risk factors. So this first one we're going to look into is predisposing risk factors. So it's defined here as when individuals or a community lack knowledge or skills that they need to change the risk factor. So some examples: they may not know how to exercise, or if we stick with smoking, they may not know how to quit. They may not know the effects of smoking or the lack of exercise. They may not have the skills to move, or the skills to quit smoking, or the skills to cook healthy meals, right? So these are our predisposing risk factors. And again, on the following slides, we'll go through these, but I'm going to go through this slide first. Reinforcing risk factors. This definition is when individuals or a community do not have people around them who can reinforce positive change. So for change to occur, we need others to reinforce this, to be supportive, right? So what if you live in a household with other smokers? Do you think it's going to be harder for you to quit? Absolutely. What about hanging around people who don't exercise and you're trying to be more active? Do you think that's going to have influence your behavior? Absolutely. And having friends involved in gang activity, it's going to be harder for you to get out of those bad behaviors if you're in those groups. Let's talk about enabling risk factors. So here it's defined as when individuals or communities do not have access to necessary facilities, tools, medicines, and assets. So some examples here: there's no access to gyms, scarcity of hospitals or clinics. So in rural areas, this is really a big deal, because in rural areas they don't have gyms, they don't have hospitals, they don't have clinics, they don't have a lot of the resources that bigger cities often have. No availability of fresh produce. Some cities, individuals really rely on getting all of their food from gas stations. Guys, if you've ever looked in a gas station, there is not many healthy options there, right? There's not a bunch of fresh produce laying around to purchase. So this would be an enabling risk factor for choosing unhealthy options. And not being able to take off time to go to work to go see the doctor, right? So this is access. There's no access to medical care because they can't afford to miss work. All right, so going back to predisposing factors, this provides the rationale or motivation for a person or group to act. These are the knowledge, attitudes, and beliefs, their personal preferences, their existing skills, self-efficacy beliefs. Do they believe they can make this change, or do they not have faith in themselves to make changes? their age, sex, genetics, etc. So some examples of these predisposing factors for skin cancer may include genetics. Some people are more likely to be a skin cancer individual. Insufficient knowledge about skin cancer. People don't know that if you don't wear sunscreen and you're outside, that your risk for skin cancer goes up. They may have low self-esteem. They may not believe that they can put on sunscreen every day to reduce the risk of skin cancer. They may have a preference for darker skin, so that is one of their personal preferences that is going to affect their, is going to expose them to the risk of skin cancer. Or they may not believe that there's a risk there, so they have a poor perception of risk. They think, oh, that'll never happen to me, I'll never get skin cancer, I don't stay out in the sun that much, blah, blah, blah. But those are all predisposing factors that influence that behavior, that put them at risk. So these predisposing factors relate to individual level theories. Intrapersonal are most appropriate theories here for addressing these factors because this is at the individual level, right? These are personal knowledge, attitudes, beliefs, their own personal characteristics, their age, their sex, their preferences, their beliefs. These are what's affecting their lifestyle habits and behaviors. And so here we would need an individual level theory to try and change these predisposing factors. All right, let's look at reinforcing factors. So providing reinforcement and reward for actions and encouraging repetition of those actions. You must have social support, right? Peer influence. If all of your peers work out 3-4 times a week, it's much more likely that you will do the same. Peer influence. If all of your peers are heavy drinkers, you're more likely to fall into that category of also being a heavy drinker. Your significant others, your family members, your spouses, employers, teachers, healthcare providers, role models, community leaders, decision makers, they all play a role in these reinforcing factors. So for reinforcing factors, thinking about skin cancer again, skin tanning culture, right? We see in the media about all these tanning salons and things like that. Not so much anymore, but in previous years there was a lot of marketing around tanning beds and things like that. And it's really a part of that culture, that social influence. Media influence. We see pictures of supermodels and Hollywood actresses, and they all have this nice bronze glow, and this puts people at risk for skin cancer, right? They're going outside in the sun and trying to bake and get that glow. It's a definition of beauty and reward, right? So this is one of those reinforcing factors that is working for that bad behavior, putting us at risk for skin cancer. Here, interpersonal level theories are most appropriate for looking at these factors. So for predisposing, we said individual level theories. And here, interpersonal, this is between people to people, right? In between, interpersonal are most appropriate to address these factors. And our last factor here is enabling factors. This provides the means or makes the action possible. This is giving us access or availability of programs, services, or skills for us to change the behavior. So enabling factors in keeping the same topic going of skin cancer, widespread low-cost skin tanning services or businesses. So this is obviously buying into that bad behavior of tanning and tanning beds. They're out there accessible to the community, and that's making those poor choices easier. Unshaded neighborhoods and pools, areas that don't have lots of cabanas or umbrellas, areas that you can be shaded while also being outdoors, increases our risk for skin cancer. High cost, expensive sunscreens. I don't know if you've bought sunscreen recently, but they are expensive. $5-6 a bottle. That's very expensive, and it can be a barrier, an enabling factor for choosing the wrong behavior. So here, community level theories are the most appropriate in addressing these factors and in changing these behaviors. All right, so we're switching gears just a little bit. We just talked about predisposing, enabling, and reinforcing factors. Now we're going to talk about what's called the ecological perspective. So this is a socio-ecological model, and you'll see here that we have a nice image, and this is showing us the different levels of this model. And what's important here in this model is that it is showing us that there are multiple levels of influences on individuals that influence their behavior. So it's not just an individual level why people choose to make the behavior choices that they make, but it's really a multi-level influencer. And so let's talk through that. So of course there are individual or intrapersonal factors that influence our behaviors. There are characteristics such as age, gender, genetics, our knowledge, attitudes, and beliefs, our expectations, our economic status, our skills, our motivation, and our self-efficacy. These are all at that individual level as to why we make the decisions that we make and make those behaviors. But beyond that, there are also interpersonal factors that influence us. So formal and both informal social networks and supports influence our behaviors. Our family, our friends, our peers, our coworkers, our religious networks, customs and traditions. And these provide social identity, support, and role definition. One example that we mentioned earlier is if you live with a household of smokers. So you're making that individual choice, but it's also much more influenced because that family, you've grown up in that environment, and your family, maybe even your friends, are smokers, making that decision to change behavior much harder. Here, institutional or organization factors, organizations or social institutions with rules and regulations for operations affect how well services are provided to an individual or group. So financial policies, program schedules, the climate. So do you feel comfortable going to the community center? Is it open in the hours that you need it to be open? What if there's a community gym that you have access to, but it's only open 8 to 5, and those are the hours that you work? That puts up a barrier for you to make the healthy behavior change to exercise more. So these constrain or promote recommended behaviors based on those institutional or organizational factors. And this also goes for organizations like employers, nonprofit organizations, schools. These fall into that category. Community factors. This is the relationships among organizations, institutions, and informational networks with defined boundaries. So we can think about our built environment, thinking about sidewalks. Are there enough crosswalks that are safe for individuals to feel comfortable walking in their community? Are there bike lanes so that individuals feel safe and feel comfortable and able to ride their bike safely on the road? Businesses, transportation, all of these things are built into our community that will either promote or discourage following these healthy behavior changes. And then public policy factors. These are made at the local, state, national, and global level. They can be laws and policies. Excuse me. They give us allocation to resources. So think about healthcare and those individuals that are given access to healthcare. Restrictive policies, so different zonings and taxes. If you think about smoking, the increase in taxes on smoking could definitely discourage individuals from smoking. Lack of policies, immunizations, so things like that. These policies, children can't enter public schools without having their updated immunizations and providing a record of that. Those policies help create those behavior changes. Important questions to ask ourselves: what are those factors influencing why people choose unhealthy or healthy behaviors? And what strategies are appropriate to change the behavior, discourage risky behaviors, and encourage healthy behaviors, and assure healthy social and physical environments? So think through those questions, and we will join back on our next video and move forward on theories and models of behavior change.